Comfort is the enemy of progress because it convinces you that where you are is good enough, even when something greater is calling you forward. It whispers that staying the same is safer than growing, and it blinds you to the possibilities waiting on the other side of discomfort. The comfort zone feels warm, familiar, predictable, but it slowly drains your potential and keeps your dreams out of reach. When you settle into comfort for too long, you stop challenging yourself, and the muscles of discipline, courage, and determination begin to weaken. The truth is that every meaningful advancement in life requires you to confront something unfamiliar. Progress is forged in environments where your strengths are tested, where your fears are exposed, and where your limits are pushed. Comfort can never do that for you. It keeps your life small. It keeps your goals distant. It keeps your purpose unfulfilled. People often wait for the perfect moment to move, believing that someday they will feel ready, but readiness is not born in comfort. It is built in discomfort. Comfort creates illusions. It makes you believe that staying still is harmless, but stagnation quietly suffocates ambition. When you choose comfort repeatedly, your dreams begin to fade because dreams demand action. They require you to step out, take risks, and embrace challenges that reshape your identity. Progress lives in uncertainty, in trial and error, in falling and rising again. Comfort shields you from all of that, but it also shields you from transformation. The people who achieve extraordinary results are not the ones who felt comfortable while doing so. They are the ones who walk straight into pressure, uncertainty, and discipline because they understood that growth demands sacrifice. They forced themselves to feel discomfort on purpose. They accepted that the path to greatness is rarely pleasant, but it is always worth it. Their willingness to endure what others avoid is what separates success from mediocrity. Comfort also convinces you that tomorrow is an option. It tells you that you can succeed later, try later, become better later, but progress requires urgency. It requires you to act while others delay. The longer you remain in comfort, the harder it becomes to move forward because comfort strengthens your attachment to the familiar. Every day spent avoiding discomfort becomes another day your dreams remain waiting in the distance. When you choose to break free from comfort, even in the smallest ways, you ignite something powerful within yourself. You rediscover your hunger. You reawaken your confidence. You start to believe again in what you are capable of. Progress isn't made in giant leaps. It's made in consistent steps that challenge your old patterns and pull you toward new levels of possibility. The willingness to take those steps is what dismantles fear and builds strength. Stepping out of comfort forces you to confront parts of yourself you normally avoid. It reveals your insecurities, your doubts, your weaknesses, but it also reveals your resilience. It shows you that you are stronger than you imagined, that you can endure more than you thought, that you possess gifts you never realized. Discomfort becomes the mirror that reflects your true capacity. It brings clarity that comfort can never provide. Comfort keeps your world small, but discomfort expands you. Every time you stretch past what feels easy, your mind expands, your confidence grows, and your skill set deepens. You begin to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You start to believe in possibilities where you once saw limitations. Progress demands that you leave behind the version of yourself that comfort has shaped and step boldly toward the version waiting to be discovered. Living in comfort may feel safe, but it is the slowest kind of danger. It steals your potential without you realizing it. It convinces you that remaining the same is harmless, but in reality, staying the same is costing you everything you could become. The discomfort you avoid today becomes the regret you face tomorrow. Progress requires you to choose the temporary pain of growth over the permanent pain of staying stuck. Every breakthrough, every achievement, every transformation begins the moment you decide that comfort is no longer your standard, the moment you stop letting your feelings dictate your actions, the moment you push yourself forward simply because your future is worth more than your excuses. Comfort has never built greatness, and it never will. Only discipline, courage, and intentional effort create the life you were meant to live. The higher version of you requires discipline because greatness doesn't emerge from moments of convenience. It emerges from the choices you make when no one is watching, when motivation is low, and when the easiest option is to quit. Discipline is the force that shapes your character, sharpens your habits, and molds you into someone capable, of carrying the weight of bigger responsibilities. It is not a temporary burst of enthusiasm, but a consistent commitment to becoming the person you were created to be. Without discipline, the higher version of you remains an idea instead of becoming a reality. There is a version of you that dreams of excellence, confidence, impact, and abundance. But that version cannot exist alongside chaos, inconsistency, and excuses. Discipline is the bridge between intention and transformation. It demands that you show up even when you don't feel like it, that you push through resistance when your mind tries to pull you back into comfort. Every disciplined action you take chips away at the old version of you and makes space for growth, mastery, and purpose. Discipline is not punishment, it is preparation for everything you've been praying for. The higher version of you is not built in your moments of comfort, but in your moments of decision. Discipline trains your mind to prioritize what is important over what is easy. It teaches you to value long-term gain over short-term pleasure. It conditions you to move with purpose instead of emotion. When you practice discipline consistently, you begin to trust yourself more because you prove to yourself that you can follow through. That self-trust becomes fuel, pushing you into levels of life you never imagined. People often say they want change, but change does not respond to wishes. It responds to disciplined action. The higher you want to rise, the more discipline you must embrace. Every dream requires structure. Every goal requires order. Every breakthrough requires sacrifice. Discipline is what keeps you focused when distractions tempt you, when doubt tries to intimidate you, and when your past tries to pull you backward. It becomes the internal anchor that holds you steady when life tests your commitment. Discipline requires honesty. It demands that you confront your habits, your patterns, and your tendencies with clarity. You can't upgrade your life while clinging to behaviors that keep you average. Discipline forces you to examine your choices and ask whether they align with the future you want. It challenges you to trade calm, for responsibility, excuses for effort, and procrastination for productivity. When you discipline your actions, you begin to discipline your destiny. The higher version of you also demands that you protect your mind. Discipline influences what you consume, what you believe, and what you allow into your mental space. It helps you recognize when your thoughts are working against you and empowers you to replace them with thoughts that elevate you. A disciplined mind cannot be easily distracted, discouraged, or defeated. It remains focused on purpose, even when circumstances make that difficult. Discipline changes your relationship with time. Instead of wasting hours on activities that do not align with your purpose, you begin to invest your time in things that build your future. You stop drifting through days and start designing them. You stop reacting to life and start leading it. This shift in how you treat time is one of the biggest indicators that you are stepping into the higher version of yourself. Your effort becomes more intentional and your decisions become more strategic. The higher version of you is not only built on what you start, but also on what you continue. Discipline is the force that keeps you moving through the middle, the part where progress is slow, challenges appear, and motivation fades. Many people begin strong, but only the disciplined finish strong. Discipline anchors your momentum, fuels your consistency, and sustains your belief when results are not yet visible. It reinforces the truth that slow progress is still progress, and consistency always compounds. As you grow in discipline, you begin to see change not as a distant dream, but as a natural result of your choices. Discipline reveals that success is not about talent alone, but about persistence, structure, and consistent effort. It reminds you that the person you become is far more important than the success you achieve. The higher version of you is shaped by the habits you practice daily, the commitments you honor, and the standards you refuse to lower. Discipline elevates your standard of living by elevating your standard of thinking and doing. The higher version of you is waiting, but it cannot emerge without a disciplined foundation. It is built through repetition, through self-control, through intentional decisions, and through the willingness to do what others avoid. Discipline unlocks the doors to opportunities, influence, and impact. It transforms you into someone capable of holding success instead of collapsing under its weight. The more disciplined you become, the more your life aligns with the future you envision, and the more you step into the identity you were always meant to fulfill. Momentum begins with the first uncomfortable step because nothing in life changes until you decide to move, even when the path ahead feels unclear, intimidating, or overwhelming. That first step is rarely easy, but it is the spark that activates everything else. It interrupts old patterns, awakens dormant courage, and signals to your mind that you are no longer willing to remain where you are. Momentum does not come from thinking, wishing, or planning. It comes from acting, especially when action feels inconvenient or unfamiliar. That initial push forward is what shifts your energy and opens the door to new possibilities. The uncomfortable step is powerful because it disrupts the cycle of hesitation. Most people stay stuck not because they lack ability, but because they wait for perfect conditions before making a move. The truth is that perfection never arrives. Clarity rarely comes before action. Confidence is not built beforehand, it is built during the journey. When you take the first step despite discomfort, you train yourself to value progress over perfection and intention over fear. That decision alone separates dreamers from doers. Taking an uncomfortable step forces you to confront your limiting beliefs. It brings your fears into the open where you can deal with them instead of allowing them to silently control your life. Each step you take weakens the power of fear because action exposes the truth. Most of what you're afraid of is imagined, not real. Once you move, you realize you're stronger, more capable, and more resilient than your hesitation suggested. That realization itself feeds momentum. Momentum grows because action multiplies itself. One step leads to another, then another, until movement becomes natural. What once felt impossible becomes routine. What once felt intimidating becomes manageable. But none of this transformation can begin without the willingness to endure the discomfort of starting. The beginning is always the hardest part because it requires breaking through inertia, the force that keeps you stuck in old habits, old excuses, and old comfort zones. Momentum is not created in moments of ease, it's created in moments of resistance. When you move forward while everything in you wants to stay still, you develop inner strength that cannot be manufactured any other way. The uncomfortable step builds discipline, courage, and faith. It teaches you to trust your ability to adjust, adapt, and grow. It proves that progress is available to anyone who is willing to act before they feel ready. When you take that uncomfortable step, you shift your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who hesitates and start seeing yourself as someone who takes action. Identity drives behavior, and behavior drives results. Each time you push through discomfort, you reinforce the belief that you are capable of doing hard things. This internal shift is the true foundation of momentum because it fuels consistent action with confidence rather than fear. The uncomfortable step also reveals opportunities that were invisible while you stood still. New ideas, new connections, new strategies, and new paths emerge once you begin to move. Possibilities that once seemed out of reach become attainable simply because movement exposes you to experiences you would never encounter in a stagnant state. The world responds to your motion. When you move, life moves with you. The first step is uncomfortable because it requires letting go of certainty, letting go of control, letting go of the familiar. But letting go is necessary to gain something greater. You cannot reach new levels while holding on to old routines. The uncomfortable step is a symbolic declaration that you are willing to trade comfort for growth, settling for striving, and doubt for possibility. It is the moment you prove to yourself that your future matters more than your fear. Momentum accelerates when you no longer allow discomfort to dictate your decisions. Once you push past the fear of starting, you realize that discomfort is temporary, but the reward of movement is lasting. Each uncomfortable action becomes easier than the last because momentum creates rhythm, and rhythm creates flow. What once felt like a battle becomes a natural part of your evolution. The key is simply beginning, even if the beginning feels messy or uncertain. The truth is that many people never experience momentum because they never take the first step. They live their entire lives waiting to feel ready, hoping for more confidence, wishing for clearer direction. But readiness comes from motion, not thought. Confidence comes from repetition, not waiting. And direction becomes clear during the journey, not before it. Momentum begins with that first uncomfortable step, the one that demands courage, commitment, and the willings to move even when everything inside you wants to pause. Discipline, not emotion, shapes your destiny because emotions change with the weather, but discipline remains steady no matter how you feel. Emotions can lift you one moment and drop you the next, making your actions inconsistent and your progress unpredictable. When you build your life on emotion, you build on instability. But when you build on discipline, you build on a foundation that cannot be shaken by mood, circumstances, or temporary setbacks. Discipline ensures that your actions remain aligned with your goals, even when your feelings try to pull you off course. Emotions are powerful, but they are not reliable leaders. They convince you to quit when something becomes difficult and tempt you to delay when the work feels uncomfortable. They urge you to follow comfort instead of commitment. Discipline steps in and overrides those impulses. It reminds you of your purpose when your emotions forget it. It keeps you focused on the bigger picture when your feelings get distracted by the small frustrations of the moment. Discipline maintains consistency, and consistency creates results. When you rely on emotion to guide your decisions, you end up living reactively. You move only when you feel inspired, motivated, or excited. And as soon as those feelings fade, so does your progress. Emotion creates a roller coaster of effort, but discipline creates steady, intentional movement forward. Discipline doesn't wait for perfect energy or the right mood. It demands action because the future you want is worth more than the excuses your emotions offer you. Discipline teaches you self-control, and self-control is the key to personal transformation. It forces you to pause before reacting, think before acting, and choose what aligns with your purpose instead of what satisfies you temporarily. Emotion will encourage you to choose shortcuts and comfort. Discipline will guide you toward responsibility and long-term fulfillment. That difference in choices determines whether you remain stuck or evolve into someone capable of carrying greater opportunities. Your destiny is shaped by the habits you practice daily, and habits are born from discipline, not emotion. Emotions might inspire you to start something new, but only discipline will sustain you long enough to finish it. Whether you're building a skill, pursuing a goal, or transforming your life, discipline provides the structure that keeps you moving even when progress feels slow. It ensures that your effort compounds over time, creating momentum that emotion alone can never maintain. Over time, discipline begins to influence your identity. The more consistent you become, the more you start to see yourself as someone dependable, resilient, and capable. Emotion does not create this identity because it is too unpredictable. Discipline shapes the way you think about yourself, and when your thinking changes, your behavior changes. You begin to operate at a higher level, not because you feel like it, but because you trained yourself to act with purpose regardless of how you feel. Discipline also strengthens your resilience. When challenges appear, emotion may panic, retreat, or create doubt, but discipline reminds you of your commitment to keep going. It becomes the anchor that stabilizes you during storms. It keeps you grounded when life becomes chaotic. It helps you endure setbacks without losing sight of the goal. The stronger your discipline grows, the less power obstacles have over your direction. Emotion is reactive, but discipline is strategic. It encourages you to plan, prioritize, and protect your time. It pushes you to eliminate distractions and master your focus. Emotion thrives in chaos, but discipline thrives in clarity. When you operate with clarity, you make decisions from strength, not weakness. You create routines that elevate your life instead of habits that sabotage it. This strategic way of living becomes the blueprint for a destiny built with intention, not chance. Discipline frees you from the limitations of your feelings. You stop saying, I'll do it later, I don't feel motivated, or I'm not in the mood, because discipline does not negotiate with those excuses. It teaches you that your goals don't care about your emotions, they care about your actions. Discipline transforms your life because it transforms your priorities. It shifts your focus from what feels good now to what will feel great later. Your destiny is not determined by how you feel from day to day. It is determined by what you consistently choose to do. Emotion may inspire you, but discipline shapes you. Emotion may motivate you, but discipline transforms you. Emotion may start the journey, but discipline is what carries you to the finish line. By mastering discipline, you take control of your trajectory, your potential, and ultimately the life you are capable of creating. Your limits are illusions created by past experiences because every boundary you believe you have is rooted in something that has already happened, not in what you are truly capable of becoming. The mind remembers failures, disappointments, and mistakes, and it uses those memories to build invisible walls around your potential. These walls feel real because they are tied to emotions, but they are nothing more than old stories you've accepted as truth. When you look closely, you realize your limitations are not a reflection of your ability, they are a reflection of your history, and history does not define destiny. Past experiences have a way of shaping your self-image. A setback can convince you that you're not qualified. A failure can make you believe you're not capable. A rejection can create the illusion that you are not worthy. These moments plant seeds of doubt that grow into barriers if you do not challenge them. But the thing about illusions is that they disappear the moment you confront them with truth. The truth is that you are stronger, wiser, and more resourceful now than you were during those past moments that created the illusion of limitation. When you carry the weight of old experiences, you unintentionally allow them to dictate your decisions. You may hesitate to pursue a dream because something failed before. You may avoid certain challenges because you once felt unprepared. You may shrink your goals because life once delivered a painful outcome. But just because something happened in the past does not mean it will be repeated. Growth means you are no longer the person who went through those experiences. Those old limits were created for a version of you that no longer exists. Your mind often protects you by exaggerating your limitations. It tries to keep you safe, but in doing so, it keeps you small. It convinces you that taking risks will lead to the same pain you once felt, even though you now have more knowledge, more resilience, and more clarity than ever before. These illusions feel like reality until you challenge them with action. Every time you step beyond a fear, the illusion weakens. Every time you face a challenge, the illusion cracks. Every time you succeed at something you once thought impossible, the illusion dissolves. Limits created by the past are built on assumptions, not facts. They assume that because you struggled once, you always will. They assume that because you didn't know how before, you never will. They assume that because someone doubted you, their doubt must be true. But assumptions are fragile. When you test them, you discover that most of them crumble. What remains is the realization that you had the power all along. You simply needed to separate your potential from your past. Your growth depends on your willingness to challenge the illusions that have shaped your thinking. When you begin to question why you believe what you believe about yourself, you uncover how many of those beliefs were inherited from fear, failure, or environment. You start to see how many of your limitations were learned, not real. And anything learned can be unlearned. Anything created by the past can be rewritten by the present. You gain the freedom to redefine what is possible for your life. Stepping beyond your illusions requires courage because the mind feels safest in familiar territory. Even if the familiar is limiting, it is still predictable. But progress demands that you walk into the unknown, trusting that the person you are becoming is greater than the person you were. When you move beyond what used to limit you, you don't just break old patterns, you transform your identity. You begin to operate from strength instead of fear, from expansion instead of restriction. As you challenge these illusions, your perspective shifts. What once looked like a barrier now looks like a stepping stone. What once felt impossible now feels within reach. What once held you back now becomes the reason you move forward. Past experiences stop being evidence of limitation and start becoming evidence of growth. You realize that every difficulty you survived actually equips you with the wisdom and resilience needed to rise higher. Your limits lose power the moment you recognize that they are mental constructions, not physical constraints. They cannot control your future unless you allow them to. When you stop letting the past dictate what you believe about yourself, you open the door to new abilities, new opportunities, and new outcomes. You discover STR, angst you didn't know you had and possibilities you couldn't see before. Your potential expands because your perspective expands. The truth is that your limits were never real to begin with. They were simply interpretations of experiences that you allowed to shape your identity. When you choose to see those experiences as lessons instead of limitations, everything changes. You free yourself from the invisible barriers that have held you back and step into a future defined by growth, possibility, and purpose. Your future becomes real only when you act with urgency, because dreams do not manifest through intention alone. They become tangible when you decide that waiting is no longer an option. Urgency turns ideas into movement, movement into momentum, and momentum into results. Without urgency, even the greatest vision remains nothing more than a wish. When you choose to act now instead of later, you signal to your mind that your future matters more than your excuses, more than your comfort, and more than your fear. That shift in priority is the spark that brings possibilities to life. Urgency eliminates the illusion of endless time. Many people convince themselves that there will always be another day, another opportunity, another perfect moment to begin. But that illusion is dangerous, because every day wasted becomes a day stolen from the life you could be living. When you operate with urgency, you understand that your future is not promised, and your destiny cannot be fulfilled through passive waiting. You stop treating your dreams casually and begin treating them like something that must be pursued with intention and consistency. Acting with urgency forces you to focus. It removes the distractions that dilute your potential and keeps you aligned with your purpose. When you know time is precious, you stop giving your attention to things that pull you backward. You stop entertaining habits that stunt your progress. You stop tolerating environments that drain your energy. Urgency sharpens your mind and elevates your standards, because you recognize that every moment wasted is a moment you can never reclaim. Urgency also creates clarity. When you decide to move now instead of later, you stop overthinking and start executing. You discover solutions by doing, not by waiting. You gain insight through action, not through hesitation. The path becomes clearer once you begin walking on it. Clarity is rarely found before the journey begins. It is found during the journey. Urgency accelerates this process by pushing you into motion where real understanding is formed. Your future becomes real through urgency, because urgency builds discipline. When you act now, you train yourself to stop relying on motivation and start relying on commitment. You develop the habit of doing what is required instead of what is comfortable. This discipline compounds over time, turning small actions into significant transformation. Urgency creates consistency, and consistency creates results that emotion alone could never produce. Acting with urgency changes your identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who waits, hesitates, or delays. You begin to see yourself as someone who leads, initiates, and executes. That identity shift is powerful because your behavior always rises to match who you believe you are. When you believe you are someone who moves with purpose, you naturally begin acting like it. Your decisions strengthen. Your confidence deepens. Your future begins to take shape through the actions you take daily. Urgency destroys excuses. It doesn't allow you to hide behind reasons like I'm not ready, it's not the right time, or maybe later. When you operate with urgency, you understand that readiness comes through action, not before it. You stop negotiating with your fear because you recognize that hesitation costs more than effort. You stop waiting for convenience because you understand that convenience rarely produces greatness. Urgency becomes the antidote to procrastination, fear, and indecision. When you approach your future with urgency, opportunities begin to appear that would have remained hidden if you stayed passive. Life rewards movement. People notice your commitment. Doors open because your energy creates momentum. Possibilities arise because action puts you in the right place at the right time. Urgency positions you for breakthroughs that waiting could never provide. It aligns you with success because success responds to initiative, not intention. Urgency also fuels resilience. When challenges appear, a passive mindset retreats, but an urgent mindset adapts. It doesn't waste time complaining, doubting, or overthinking. It responds quickly, finds solutions, and keeps moving. This resilience strengthens you over time, making you someone who can handle bigger responsibilities and greater opportunities. Your future grows because you grow, and urgency is the environment where growth flourishes. Your future becomes real only when you act with urgency, because urgency bridges the gap between where you are and where you want to be. It turns dreams into plans, plans into action, and action into achievement. It demands that you stop postponing your potential and start living like your purpose cannot wait. It forces you to step into the version of yourself that is ready to claim the future you were meant to create.